The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Steven Schoefs and I welcome you to this Fleet Europe webinar with the support of CARA, the European Car Remarketing Association. The information shared within this webinar will be subject to disclaimers which can be viewed in detail via the recording of this webinar session that will be shared on our website fleeteurope.com. I have the honor to moderate today this webinar on car remarketing. And I also have the honor to introduce a little bit later on Wolfgang Reinhold, CARA President, and today Mr. Reinhold will give insight about a hot topic in terms of remarketing, the fair and wear standards. We will end this webinar with a Q&A session, and as a participant you are free to send your preferred questions for the expert by using the chat function of this webinar tool. Today we organize Fleet Europe's first webinar on remarketing, and that immediately underlines the importance of the topic in today's vehicle fleet management. The costs related to end-of-life cycle have been neglected by many customers in the past. Reasons: full outsourcing with full service leasing were considered that the risks related to used car value is on the account of the lease provider. And also there has been a focus on upfront and visible costs, and there was low attention for costs related to driver behavior. But this has changed. Now that fleet customers have grabbed the so-called low-hanging fruit, the focus is expanding to less predictable cost areas like end-of-contract elements. And since years, the end-of-contract costs related to wear and tear are based on certain guidelines. But these guidelines can vary from country to country and even from lease provider to lease provider, with a possible negative impact on transparency and consistency. Often these guidelines haven't evolved with the development of the car technology, nor the changed road conditions and infrastructure. As a result, the so-called unfair wear and tear can create a certain burden for lease and car rental companies, but also the fleet customers, with implications for costs, profitability, and prices. That is why CARA, the European Car Remarketing Association, is aiming to establish fair wear and tear standards that apply throughout the industry across national and sectoral boundaries. This for the benefit of transparency and to serve both the fleet customer and the car and lease sector and our fleet management industry. To explain in detail why and how the European Car Remarketing Association wants to develop the new fair wear and tear standards, please welcome Mr. Wolfgang Reinhold, the President of the Association. Mr. Reinhold, if you can hear me, then this webinar floor is yours.
Steven, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen on the other side, dear colleagues, dear friends, it is a pleasure from my side to try to give you an overview on what we mean with fair wear and tear. We already have established a couple of things, and hopefully in the next 1 or 2 years this will be the new industry standard, driven by the industry with a fair way towards our customers, an interesting way towards the used car dealers who are buying the used cars, and for the whole industry. The only thing I can give you in the next couple of minutes is an overview of a glance of fair wear and tear, because if we do it in full details, I think it will take a week, but we have only roughly 30 minutes over. Thank you. There's one slide. I lost a slide. Anyway, I'm not sitting in my office, therefore here it is. I have one phrase before I begin what means fair wear and tear for the industry. I'm many, many years in the industry, and I have an old phrase what says a leasing company is as good as the first car returns. That means it's a free floating for 2 or 3 or even 4 years. When you sign a contract, there is maybe different parties were present, different people were present. You forget a lot of things, what is happened after 3 or 4 years. What is logic? You don't know all the details. And it is important that you always repeat what has happened when the first car is coming back. When you have the first turnaround, then you know what it is. And I think that's quite important to understand. That is on one side easy, on the other side, after you sign the contract, it will take a long way. Now, I will give you an 8 different defleeting exercise. We are starting off with assessment, industry-driven solution, minimum requirement, off-lease inspection process, conditions and the appraisal report, and then supporting of the car remarketing process. Independent certification, that is quite important because that gives you a very nice footprint and what is the benefit of a European solution. Steve, next slide, please. As you can read this, I don't want to repeat what is written here. I just want to give what is important, what is this statement means. Transparent, fair, accept charges if needed, and furthermore, use the same procedure in selling the used car into the market. Don't make too many different reports and different one. Use one report for the front end and the back end and take that through. I will repeat this more often. The used car market is already a very global market. Therefore, a pan-European guideline is very essential. How is the process going? It's very simple. You have to pick up the car. The car has to be inspected in a proper environment. The car has to be clean. A proper lighting needs around, and an easy process from entry to the storage have to be given. The appraiser should be an independent person, no conflict between the leasing company and the customers. Clear standards have to be defined. What that means, I come to that later. Even before the first car returns, best even when you sign into the new contract, the brochure fair wear and tear, and this is already exists in most of the leasing companies and in the industry. You will see what I mean on my next slide. Historical, you can write a lot of things down. You can make a booklet of 100 pages where you describe everything in details. But in my personal point of view is a picture can say more than 1,000 words. Good picture is important. Let's speak the picture. And you can see the example here on the dent is what is accepted and what is not accepted. And you need easy measurements. What I did in the past is, for example, you have a little dent, and if you can put a €1 coin over the dent, then you should not charge for the dent. You can play around a little bit with other currencies where you have maybe currencies and coins which are much bigger, but euro is fair enough for the time being that we can use that, and that is one of the measurements you can do. And further, Steve, if it's not only the damage, you should be checked. You have all ready to check the all the keys. Otherwise, you will have later, if the car is stolen after the 3rd or 4th sales, you have a problem with insurance company. You need all legal papers, totally different from country to country. You need the road book, the key radio pass if it's necessary, the navigation equipment, at least a CD if it's still in, and other toolkits, what is related to the cars. As well as all car-related items you have to collect as well and fulfill it. It's like the fuel card, toll road box, you know, the peeper you have in the windscreen in a couple of countries when you drive on the motorways, this kind of things, what is not belong to the driver, what is belongs to the car and to the leasing company. Okay. Fair wear and tear, industry-driven solution. All this should be described in a booklet. As I said before, you have already from ALD, Aval, LeasePlan, and all the other countries have some sort of a booklet. Have to be very clear and precise, mentioned in the brochure, in the existing brochure. More or less everybody has said has a brochure, and basically all international players are more or less similar. If you copy paste a booklet, I strongly believe it's over 90% exactly the same in the booklet, because by the end a dent is a dent, a damage is a damage, and a cigarette burn in a seat is a cigarette burn in the seat. You cannot make that smaller or bigger. It is as it is, and this goes into the first step for European approach. The guidelines, the minimum requirement. What should you have? You should have an assessor who is an expert in the field. You don't need an engineer. You need somebody who got the feeling on metal, on dents, on scratches, and he can make that properly into a machine. You use a photograph, you need a laptop, an iPad, or this kind of things. There's already a lot of things available in the market. That is important, that somebody understands how it works. You should have the booklet be completed and up to date. That is important. As we see on the right side over, you should not have a booklet what is 5 or 7 or 10 years old. Things are changing and you have to have it up to date. Don't get it every year, but every 2 years at least it should be a good booklet. And the appraiser company, the company you're doing that, should be using market data. I'm using the 3 names because they are the members of our association. It's Macadam, Decra Auto Solution, and SGS. They are using proper data, and this data should come from ETG, Solera, or all the other data providers in the industry. And this data you use for insurance, you can use for the fair wear and tear as well. Therefore, once again, we have an expert in the market, we have the right booklet, and we have the right software. That is important. More details on the next page. Acceptable and unacceptable. Can you move the page, please, Stephen? As I said, pictures are saying more than anything else. What you should do, you should take a ruler that you know how many centimeters is on a plain panel of metal. If it's 2 centimeters, 3, 4, and 5, and that is a little bit up to the description of the leasing companies. What do you charge? 2 centimeters deep, 3 centimeters or long. That is the freedom, but it should be very clearly defined in the booklet. It is important here that, and I'll come to that later, that there is a difference between passenger cars and light commercials. A light commercial is on a total different use than a passenger car, and therefore this is totally different, and it should be measured in a different way. But once again, you can have that in a booklet as well. Either use the same, or the best thing is that you use a different booklet, one for passenger cars and the other for light commercials. And to be very fair, I pinched that idea many, many years ago from the UK, from the BVLA, because they have that already in use for many, many years. Okay, a small wrap up here. You need a professional appraisal company who really knows what they're doing. You need the right guidelines. You need the expert in the field who understands what is a damage, what is fair, and what is unfair. You need the description, and you have to show how it is with the right picture. And then you go and need external data that you know where the data is coming from to make the calculation on the appraisal and on the condition report. As I said before, Audatex, Eurotax, all these kind of companies have it. And at the latest moment, you need a very clear and easy documentation. You can have documentations per car of 20 pages, which if you go in the resale process, no used car dealer is interesting to read 20 pages. A nice, good overview, 1, maximum 2 pages, where you give all the details, standard pictures, the reports, the inside, the outside, the tire size, the model, the branding, and all this kind of things in one overview. And then the dealer can choose very simple. He understands how the cars look like, and he can give the right price. That is at the back end. On the front end, even here, you send that back to your customers, and the customers can see all the dents, and then they have to do whatever they have to do, talk to the drivers, recharge it to the drivers, and whatever that is, it is up to the leasing company and it's up to the customers what they do with the appraisal report. But this should be the base. If you have to invoice something, this should be the base where you invoice things. More in transparent, clear documents. We will have that, follow that in the future. Now you can see that already. You see it here. It's very clear. Coming back to pictures, the experience we have on average on the passenger cars, you should start off with what I call marketing pictures. A car from the inside, from the outside, from the front and from the back. That is for the marketing part. Then every single damage should be photographed and should be mentioned. Dents and other kind of things should be either rounded by an edding or showing by a ruler. That is quite important. And then you have on average on the passenger cars around 10 to 15 pictures. And if you go up to light commercial, heavy use light commercial, you go up with up to 40 pictures, because the inside is more damaged and more important that you make the right pictures, where you have the charges, you know, loading is floating around, is making dents into the sidewall, and this kind of things that have to be reported. Process on the car remarketing part. You know, if you can go, sorry, Stephen, you are too fast. If you go back, this is a typical picture how it looks like on the internet to the used car world. And as I said, the same exercise should be used in sales. You should do exactly the same pictures, the marketing pictures. You should do exactly the same damages. If you repair a damage in the meantime, which you have to calculate if it makes sense or not. Here, / my own experience, most of the damages to repair is too expensive. Leave it up to with the used car dealers. They can do it in a more efficient and even in a more cheaper way. The dealer knows exactly how the car looks like, and he gives you a fair offer on the car. A logical point here is more damages you have, less is the value, and the higher is the repair cost. That's the logical point. And even the second step, what we can see in the last couple of years, that leasing companies becoming more B2C sales, opening outlet centers, car markets, and this kind of things. It is even then more important that you show an end consumer how the car looks, even on the negative side. You can start internally a whole debate in your company. Shall we show the damages, yes or no? One thing I can assure you out from my experience in the past is, as more information to give to B2B and as well to a B2C, it is less stress afterwards, it is more open, it's transparent, and the main thing, it is very fair. Telling you all the lies of the world, what I always say is customers can believe or not. On the other side, what is in this process very, very important, that you certify your process with an external company. There is more than TÜV Nord, which I know from the past. It can be Deloitte, it's SGS, Department of SGS is doing this kind of things. More and more other companies are doing that. And these companies are coming to you and they follow the process. And it is described in the booklet, and it is described on the international standard, what will be described in the future in the European standard, and you get a certification. You can compare that a little bit with an ISO certification stamp. And if you have that, that is already 50% of the bill is paid towards the customers, because these companies are doing the process and not in interest of the company who is paying the bill. It is in the interest for the industry. And that is the most important thing in my personal point of view afterwards, to get the certification, to get the stamps, you get it right. And this is the best marketing event you can have. You show it to your customers. Even when they sign the contract, I said before, there's a 3-year blind flying around, and if you tell them already that your process, the defleeting process, is in a certifying process and is stamped and is controlled every year, every 2 years, then it goes easier to sign the contract than without it. So, we're coming close. Why a European solution? We have already 100% global car remarketing across border sales. We are selling every day more than thousands and thousands of cars from country A to country B. It's not only floating from west to east, it's floating from east to north, it's floating from north to south. This is happened, and in the future it will become more and more and more this way. Legal legislations as we had in the past, for example, there was a BPM a couple of years in Holland, is still a big tax issue in Denmark and in Finland. Over the years, this will disappear, and we have a very harmonized and global market. And you have a lot of dealers who are based in Finland, who are buying cars from Portugal. They have to understand how the fair wear and tear solution works, how the standard is set, that you use the same standards, the same measurements, the same methodology, and the same logic. What we do on the same logic, you cannot have the same price, for the main reason is that the labor cost in Portugal, for example, is much cheaper than in Finland. The spare part cost in most of the countries are on a similar price. Sometimes it's a little bit cheaper or a little bit more expensive. Here is a very clear argument. The country where the car is coming back, that is the country where you choose the amount of money. A German car is chosen on German spare parts and in German labor costs, and the Greek car is used on Greek spare parts and on Greek labor costs. And if this is clear to everybody, then it is easy to access the car and then to go in if you see the damages, and then you can give a fair price. It is important to get a high price, not overpriced, but a high price. It is good for the customers because then the residual stays stable. It is good for the leasing company. You're not making losses. It is good for the accessor companies because they got more and more routine in this way, and it's good for the used car dealers because they can buy good car for good value. This is, on short, I know I'm talking very fast, and we have about half an hour for the presentation. This is a glance on fair wear and tear. As I said before, I can talk hours and hours and hours in more details, but I hope that come back with a couple of interesting questions from your side, and with all the interesting questions, then I can give more details and your specific needs. Either you are a customer or you are a leasing company, or you are a supplier, then ask any questions, and I try to answer the questions via Stephen now. Stephen, is that okay?
That's perfect, Wolfgang. Thank you also very much for your insight and already this comprehensive presentation. As Wolfgang has mentioned, if you have a question, you can ask it by using the chat function on your webinar tool. We see that we received already a few questions, so if you have other questions, please send them to us via the chat function. The first question, Mr. Reinhold, is related to the new suggested proposed European international-wide fair wear and tear standards. In terms of the timing, when do you expect to have the fair wear and tear guidelines ready and approved?
The guidelines in principle are ready. We discussed it already in the CARA assemblies in the association over the last 2 years. We need a final nitty-gritty fine-tuning, get the members, all the members in, get other states in. But as I said before, and if you can see that on the website, we have roughly 30 members, and there's more in the market. We are trying to use Lease Europe as well to take that into consideration, as this is a European standard. And then if we have all the countries, all Europe on the same level of platform, and once again, we are not going details. We are not looking for a standard on the same pricing. We are not looking standard on the same labor rates. That is always independent to the individual leasing company and fleet management company behind. And when we have all these last things around, we have the next assembly by the end of the year together with Fleet Europe. We have that in Estoril on the same week. And when we have then a sign-off, and then we have to go parallel with the process to the European Commission, which is not easy. It is a big moloch of administration which we have to cover. And if we have that signed, and if we have that authorized, I hope in 2018 this will be a standard, and this standard should be used then as well by all national leasing companies as well as international. I don't see that as an issue. I see it more in international companies where we have to start again why and how, and even the customers can help us. If you don't have a standard, if you don't have a brochure, if you don't have a clear description, make sure that you get it in your contract, or only one warning, be careful to sign a contract.
Okay. there is someone that wants to know, perhaps you mentioned it already, but then can you repeat just for you the main, let's say, elements, the main highlights of that new European standard? What are they? What will be, let's say, the key elements of that new standard?
It is, just to maybe change that a little bit, Stephen, it is not a new standard. The standard is already in the market for the last 20 years. But it's defined, it started as a little tiny flower and now it's a big flower area. New standards, there is no real highlights. We have to be confronted. It started off many years ago. Airbags, all airbags. How do you see that? We have the CO2 emission measured, the NOx way measured. All these kind of things will be added on in a standard over the years. And whatever comes in the future, for example, with electric cars, how do you measure the performance of the electric engine? What is not exist today, but it will come. And that will add on. It's a living document, a living process where we always bring this kind of things back. How do you measure this? What is new? What is coming? Autonomous driving, car connecting, and all these kind of things will be added on in the fair wear and tear reporting, because it is an element of a car and a part of a car which is extremely important to understand when you buy a used car, that all these functions are there and that they are functional or partly functional.
Okay. You are talking, and we are talking here about guidelines, about standard. Here is a question in terms of what is your opinion in terms of the difference, let's say, between young vehicles and older vehicles? Should standard or could a standard also be different, let's say, for young vehicles, for example, up to 6 months? Compared to older vehicles up to 3, 4, 5 years. What is your opinion on that?
It is not a standard what should be different. A damage or a dent is a dent, and the only standard is normally on the normal calculation, you do a calculation on 100% base that everything is brand new replaced. If you have a car, and I make it very simple, Renault Kangoo, 6 years old, 450,000 kilometers, and you have a total amount of 3,000 euros on replacing damages, that is not fair. You should have some sort of how you say it, I miss the word, Abschreibung, whatever that is in English, on, word is gone. I'm getting old. On depreciation, now I got the word. And you have some sort of a depreciation. As older the car is, as many miles you have, as higher is the depreciation. If you have a young car, rental car, for example, 6 months old, then you charge nearly the brand new price. There's a couple of things you should not charge. You should see that on a fair part. But if you have a lot of crutches around the door key with a brand new car, 6 months old, you should replace it. If you have it on a car what is 6 years old and maybe driven in transport or with multiple drivers, then it's usual. Then you should not charge that in the same way. Therefore, the measurement should be the same. Depreciation should be related to the time and the kilometers or mileage of the car. I hope this is clear.
Okay. A question related also to the fact fair wear and tear and unfair wear and tear. It's a question if, Wolfgang, as CARA president, you have information, a study, figures showing a direct link, for example, between unfair wear and tear and client retention. Do you have information about that? Can you give us a little?
We have information, but put it the other way around, that is detailed personal information from the leasing companies, which you measure that. If an accessor comes and makes the whole assessment of a car, fair and unfair, the total amount is 100. What is charged is maybe 60. What is not charged is 40. But there is no pattern. And to be honest, we have to be careful with internal information to put that on, and then the discussion start what is fair and unfair. This is up to the leasing companies. Yes, we know what is fair and what is unfair. You can see that in most of the brochures, but we don't have exact figures that 32% is fair and the rest is unfair, or vice versa. That is information we should not have and we should not give, because that is privacy owned by the leasing company.
Okay. Because the idea is, of course, that this can be supported by the complete industry. What for the car rental, car lease providers that perhaps are not willing to support this and do their own thing? What is your opinion about that, and what is your advice?
They're not doing their own things. I mean, I know the rental companies, I know the OEMs, what they're doing. The only thing what they do, they're trying to come up with some sort of a measurement, with some sort of a brochure. When the car is returning, then normally they go through and fighting over every single car. I think that is old-fashioned, that is history. We have so many electronic support on this kind of measurements. If you do it with the camera going around, measure dents and this kind of things, what you can do in a full electronical way. I think that should be a way, a cost-efficient way, and not if you return 1,000 cars, you should not discuss 1,000 pieces of papers between a rental company and an OEM, what is fair and what is not fair. Therefore, the process is the same. They should use a process with different measurements. You don't have, even you have drivers in the rental company make accidents. They should be recorded. And when you have recorded, then you know how good the car is by the end. And if you have a heavy used car, you as a rental company have to pay a little bit more to the OEM, and that is fair. And if you have a very good looking car from the goes back to the OEM on a buyback, you should not go and overcharge it. And this is fair as well. It's a win-win situation on both sides.
Okay. A question related, a little bit looking into the future already. How are you going to secure that the standards stay up to date? Is it planned, for example, to have a yearly update or each 2 years to make sure that the standards can be adapted to market reality and to the car technology and so on?
We will definitely look into it on a yearly basis. The experience from the past was that every 2 years it is enough to change the brochures. Sometimes, as I said, we are playing with pictures. You should show pictures with the car what is still exists and what is not 10 years old or what is already 3 facelifted in between. That is one element, just to bring it up to the latest standard. If you take, for example, I had that own experience with the vignette. What is the vignette? You have to show the vignette. If you have the year 2020, you should not show a vignette from the year 2003. The basic is the same, the information is the same, it looks a little bit old. This is the basic things you have to do. Our principle is we look at it every year. If it's important, very important items, we will change it. If it's less important, then we keep it for another year. But by normal time, I think we will change this brochure or the information, and I'm calling always brochure. It should be, in my point of view, an e-brochure electronically, and we will change that, I guess, on average every 2 years.
Okay. Another question that just popped in. I'm going through it now. It starts with a comment that okay, there might be a possibility that, for example, from the supplier's side, let me check, that these new standards, or that these standards, let's say, as they become internationally wide, could result in a reduction of invoices and of contract charges. And the question is related, how is the leasing community already willing to support this initiative? Is every lease provider already in?
Yes, on the other side, as I said, I have started the fair wear and tear report about 25 years ago in Germany in the Association of the Independent Leasing Companies. And since then it's running. It is not a brand new thing, but it was mainly in Germany. And I don't think that this will be an issue. I mean, this is, whoever raised that question, feel free to give me a call and we can discuss that offline. It's not relevant for me. I don't think that it's maybe the right answer. this person will listen for, but this is not a relevant question for me.
Okay. Based on your experience, Mr. Reinhold, what for you are, let's say, the 2 or 3 tips that you would give to an international fleet customer having a big fleet to avoid end of contract costs?
To avoid end of contract costs, it starts before you train your driver. If your driver is driving, you give them a booklet, put it under the pillow for 2 nights, and it should be in their mind, this is how I have to return the car in 3 years' time. It is not easy like that, but this is the way you should push that forward. If it's not the case, and if you want to be secure that you are not having too many surprises, check the cars of your drivers when they come to fleet conferences or Christmas parties or whatever, that you check that over there. If you are not 100% sure what's happened, try to check the car a couple of months before it returns. Look how it is, but there's always extra cost involved. And to avoid all this extra cost and extra money, make sure that with your leasing company that you have the right brochure, the right measurements, certification, the right company in place to do it in a fair way. The only thing I can say, if you return a car heavily damaged, it costs you money. If you leave your apartment heavily damaged, if you have a white carpet and you have a nice farewell party, you spoil red wine all over, you crush entrance doors and the wash bays, you pay for it. And it will not be an argument for you. Yes, you damage it, you pay for it. And same is with cars. And you should treat and use a company car as it is your own. And if there is a damage, you have to pay for it. If there's something wrong, well, the worst thing I had on an S-Class many, many years ago, a car was returned and the dashboard was not exist. And the new dashboard on an S-Class was a couple of €1,000. And the argument from the managing director was, yeah, things could happen. His tackle was eaten the dashboard when he left him in the car. Fine, it is not a fair, it is not nice, but you cannot return a car like that. You have to pay for it. And this may be a bit of a stupid example, but the best thing is train your drivers that they're using the car in the right way and you return it and the level of damages will be limited. Leasing companies, and I can break here something for leasing companies are not looking into make extra money. Leasing companies are looking into it not to lose money. Okay. Because you calculate the car on the normal return standard. And if it's the case, then everybody is happy.
Okay. 2 very concrete questions. One is related to the explanation that you already have been given. Can you clarify once again that it is not a purpose to have one and the same booklet which describes the fair wear and tear standard across all lease companies? Every lease company will still have its own conditions based on the fair and wear standards. Is that true?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's a freedom. We cannot go. We are not it should not be the case. Everybody should have their own way, not their own way. The standard is set. However you measure that, if you are more open to customers, if you want to take more risk, or if you have other measurements in place, it's up and free to every single, because it's not association money, it's the lease company's money, how they deal with, what they charge. I give you one example, a pretty simple one. A labor rate in a big country goes, say, from 50 euros to 100 euros. Are you taking an average of 75 to measure that? Are you taking in the southern part or northern part, don't take it. Are you taking the lower one? Are you taking the higher one in the middle? Are you taking a little bit above the average, or are you taking it a little bit below them? This is the decision made by the leasing companies, how they measure that. I hope maybe that example makes clear that we are not saying country A, 100 euros done out and over. That's not the case. Everybody can play around, but in the standard, if the labor rate is 100, you cannot charge, you should not charge, and you cannot charge 300, especially when you have a certification process in place.
Related to that, there is also a suggestion, and we want to know your reaction. Of course, there might be differences between the markets and so on, and perhaps also between some kind of strategy of the car rental and leasing companies. But the suggestion is, what is wrong, for example, to try to have one booklet per country
it is up to the local association. We have that. I take the Belgium example. Rentas is having a booklet. The German VMF is having a booklet. The UK is having a booklet. That is on National Leasing Association. But if you compare the booklets with the international standard, there is no a big variation. It is only goes on a national level in more details and in more car-specific areas. Whenever you need I don't know, a special certification or a special machine for road tax or motorways and this kind of thing, that is more described there than you do it on the international way. Otherwise, you have 15 pages of how to describe that in 20 different countries. It is all thing, and it already exists. This, all the renters, all the BVLA is already on the base on the European solution / the European solution is based on the already existing national information.
Okay. Another very specific question. Mr. Reinhold, are you aware of any already working automatic solutions for appraisal reports that can issue the report without any human intervention?
Yeah, there's something I saw that it's a couple of months ago. It's a machine, it's a rollover machine, looks a little bit like a car washing machine, which is in a process to be rolled out. The first remark is it is expensive. A second one is a lot of digital information that you go around with your mobile camera and photograph the car when it's returned, and then it gives the scratches, not yet automatically linked to a price, but the standard of the car. This will become very, very important in the future, for example, for car sharing, because you have 3, 4, 5 different drivers, and if you see there is a lot of dents for your own thing, you take your app, you photograph it around, and you send it back to the car sharing company. There's no money, nothing involved, because everything is insured. There is already a lot of electronic support in the future, which the real breakthrough will come, I guess, in the next coming years. As electronic, this kind of things going so far, whatever is new today is already old tomorrow. But there's more and more, is more than a piece of paper and a pencil and booklets. I mean, that is already digital, is far, not as far as it could be, but they are working on it on a daily basis.
Okay. Also very concrete is the following one. In Germany, some leasing companies provide paint thickness information. Is it going also to be implemented in the standards? Is that one of the elements even so detailed that it's going to be included?
On the other side, if you have a very clear, if you're very transparent over all the things, what's happened with the cars, with accidents and replacement and accidents, this kind of things, then you don't need this paintment. I think it's called MÜ. I don't know if it's the English name as well. It was 20 years ago a very common thing. Everybody was running around with a machine and holding it on. But if it's very clear that this car didn't have an accident, then you don't need it. Everything goes on trust and to be fair. If you play fair and if everything is on trust and this car didn't have an accident, then you don't need the thickness of the measurement. I know a few countries, especially East European driven, love it to run around and measure the thickness. Mm-hmm. But it's more important, once again, and then to round that up, is more important what is the description of the accident than have a little bit too much paint on the panel.
Okay, I understand. Related again to the booklets, one booklet, more booklets, and so on and so on. You already mentioned that for some local car lease and rental association, there is, let's say, a sort of agreement and one booklet that is issued. The question is related to those countries in Europe that perhaps have no booklet today. Do you know any, for example, in which European countries is there no, yes, let's say, standardization in terms of a fair wear and tear standard booklet from a national association? Italy, yeah. Other?
No, there is, all the big countries have some sort of a standard. The question is everybody in the association, is everybody using it? That if you take, for example, Germany, the markenunabhängige Leasinggesellschaften over there, it's only, it's not the whole industry. They have a booklet, they call it die faire Fahrzeugbewertung, but it's not used by everybody in the market. And therefore, that is the first thing, is that the industry and the customers and the fleet customers should be aware this kind of booklet should exist. This is the process, how it goes. Put pressure on your existing leasing company if they don't have it to implement it. And then next question is then to the colleagues who have to implement it. Don't invent the wheel new. Do something what is already standard. Do something where we are working on it in total already for the last 20 years. With all the mistakes we made 20 years ago, with all the mistakes we maybe will make in the future. As I said, it's a living, rolling document which will be in the market for the next 20 years, but then totally different. New things are coming, and that's a standard. Try to use that. And once again, I'm not pushing for one booklet. If we have an electronic version, you even can copy-paste version over it if you should do that. And maybe we were coming to one booklet. It could be nice, but it's not absolutely necessary.
Okay, then a question a little bit in between two of the, let's say, fields where CARA is at the moment working on. So we have the fair wear and tear guidelines, and at the other hand, there is also, let's say, the mileage fraud. And the question here is a bit related to both. It's to understand a little bit more the position of your actions with regard to mileage fraud, and then related to fair wear and tear guidelines. Would it be possible, for example, that an independent company such as, and you have mentioned them, SGS, DEKRA, Macadam, would also check at the same moment of the inspection, also if something has been done with the mileage indication in the used car?
If you can check it, if you can see it, if you have a proof, yes, you should check that. On the other side, if we constantly measure the correct mileage, and maybe for the audience, the quick thing is pretty simple. As soon as you have the VIN number, the odometer, and the date when you read it, this should become in a database, and then it always will increase and increase and increase. And if you have a car with 150,000 kilometers in January, surprisingly enough, this car should not have 130,000 kilometers in June. And if you have a constant, and the data is there, it is simple. As I said, it's 3 elements: VIN number, odometer, and the date when you have read it, and that's all. We don't want driver information specifics. We have it in Belgium called CARA. They have much more information, but here it's, for me, fine enough to have that. And if we have that pan-European, and then you can secure that even when the car is returned on fair wear and tear, latest then, you read the mileage, and it should make sense, because with the correct mileage, which you read in a fair wear and tear process, it is part of the appraisal and the condition report. That is even important for the customers, where you recharge extra mileage or this kind of things. It is an important element, and it will link, and it's linking already into each other.
Okay. A final question is related to the association, Wolfgang. And the question is quite simple. How can people find more information about the European Car Remarketing Association and their activities?
That's very simple. www.cara-europe.org. There's the 5 deliverables. As we said, it's a fair wear and tear, mileage, international transport solution, import and export regulations, and all these kind of things have to be lobbied at the EU. This is the 5 deliverables we as an association are working on together with the members. That is something, the list of members are there. It's not only leasing companies, it's short-term, long-term, auctions, OEMs, data suppliers, appraisal companies. I hope I've got everybody. As I said, we are roughly 30. I think in total, if we're coming up to 50 or 60, and as we are a young little baby, we're only 3 years old, or we will have our 3rd assembly by the end of this year. And then we have covered more or less the whole industry on footprint on European car remarketing. That's the important thing. You should have a footprint on European car remarketing. It doesn't matter if it's transport, if it's leasing company, if it's short term, if it's auctions. This is important that we get this people on board actively working with us.
Okay. Thank you very much, Wolfgang Reinhold and CARA, the European Car Remarketing Association, for supporting this webinar. As you can see on your screen, there will be a recorded version that will also be made available later on online on our website, fleeteurope.com. So if there is something that you want to check again, or if there is a question or an answer that you want to hear again, you can do that in the upcoming days, because we will share a recorded version. There will also be a little satisfaction survey, and we ask you to fill it in and send it back, because it will help us improve future webinars. And then, of course, I can imagine, I'm quite sure, as we are developing the program, the 4th edition of the Remarketing Forum, and that will be this year on the 5th of December in Estoril, Portugal, that also there we will elaborate on fair wear and tear guidelines and on other hot pressing topics related to used cars and car remarketing. I think that this was a really interesting first webinar on remarketing. Want to thank Wolfgang Reinhold again for your expertise, and I hope to see you soon in an upcoming webinar. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much from my side. Bye-bye all. Bye-bye.